four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. John is the one who most clearly and most vividly says over and over again through the words and the actions of Jesus. John is the one who has Jesus say in various ways over and over and over again, if you want to know what God is like, watch me. This is what Jesus says over and over again in John. None of the other Gospels even come close to lifting up this concept compared to John. If you take this concept away from the Gospel of John, the Gospel collapses like a house of cards. Time and time again, if you want to know what God is like, Jesus says, watch me, listen to me. That is what is so hilarious about the encounter that Chris just read for us between Philip and Jesus. Because essentially Jesus is saying to his disciples, he's leaving them. Scholars call this part of the gospel part of Jesus' quote, farewell address. Isn't it great that, of course scholars put it that way. Jesus stands up, I'd like to give you all now my farewell address. Jesus never says that. But the scholars call this part, it's part of Jesus' farewell address. He's saying goodbye. How do you say goodbye to people you love? Well, you tell them that we're going to be separated physically, but I'm with you. This is what Jesus is saying to people. I will be with you. And he uses metaphors, and he uses symbols, and one of them is, he says to them, because Thomas asks, how do we know the way? And what does Jesus say? I am the way. I'm the way. I'm the path. And then Philip says, we don't know the way. How do we? And Jesus says, what are you, blind? Have you been listening? Have you been watching? This is essentially what Jesus says. What are you, nuts? Where have you been? I've told you on every page of this gospel, if you want to know what God is like, watch me, listen to me. I am the way. Last week, Vicki and I, we left on Monday morning. We got back Thursday early evening. We went down. We've been making this trip for 15 years now. We drove to Brevard, North Carolina, where originally both of Vicki's parents lived, and her mother died a little over a year ago, and now it's her stepfather, Ron. Ron came into Vicki's family's life when she was 13. Her parents divorced. It was a very painful and acrimonious divorce when Vicki was 13, and Ron came in and married Joanne, and he's been a wonderful stepfather to Vicki and her late brother and late sister. So for 15 years, we've had to follow a path, which we followed last week. Now, I know a lot about how to drive from Westerville, Ohio to Brevard, North Carolina. I know a lot about this. And so you're so lucky today that I'm going to tell you everything about it for the next 45 minutes. You drive from Westerville to Brevard, North Carolina. You've got to trust me on what I'm about to tell you next. Without a doubt, you've got three choices. You can choose to go through Cincinnati and take 75 down to a left, well, depending on, if you take a left, if you're going south in Knoxville, don't go that way. It's okay, but it's not the best way. Or you can take the West Virginia Turnpike, 77, you take Route 33 out of Columbus. You can do, it's perfectly fine to go that way. Don't go that way. The best way is the straight shot, US 23, that runs from Columbus, Ohio to Asheville, North Carolina. Take that way. And so in order to do that, you have to utilize these 20th century options. Some of you have never seen these before. These are called, are you ready? These are called maps. And I've got a map of Ohio, West Virginia, because you started in Ohio. I've got a map of Kentucky, Tennessee. Would you like to know how long it takes to drive the entire state of Kentucky? I know you want to know this, because I just did it. We typically stop in Kentucky, but we didn't stop. It was unplanned not to stop. It takes 2 hours and 20 minutes to drive the entire state of Kentucky. And there's very little of this. There's a lot of this. A lot of this. Up and down. And I've got a map of Virginia, because you drive about an hour in Western Virginia. And I mean, it's rural. It's rural. And every 10 miles or so, you see a Confederate flag, which is a whole nother sermon for a whole nother day. But you see them. And then finally, North Carolina. You go through, oh no, I forgot Tennessee. You go through Tennessee for about an hour, and then North Carolina. You see, what Jesus was saying to the disciples was that you don't need to go to AAA to get a map. You don't need to do that. The path that you choose, Jesus was saying to his disciples gathered, is, I am the way. I am the way. I am the path. This is my, I've mentioned it before, this is my college comparative religion course textbook by John Hutchinson, and the title of this comparative religions book is Paths of Faith. He says in the introduction that the whole point of religion, I'm paraphrasing here, he said the whole point, and I love this, it's poetry as far as I'm concerned, the whole point of religion is, our religion is, quote, our path through the mortal woods. And our religion gives us meaning. 3 things: meaning, purpose, and direction. Do you want to know what God is like? Jesus said, watch me, listen to me, do what I do. What paths are you and I taking today? What paths are we choosing as individuals? What paths are we choosing as a faith community? Sometimes we are taking paths that have been put there by those who have come before us. We warm ourselves at fires that we did not build. We drink from wells that we did not dig. And we walk paths that we did not create. Sometimes that's the case, isn't it? How about a moment for all of those who have come before us? I I performed a wedding last Sunday afternoon. I was pitch hitting for another minister friend of mine. The wedding was at Darby House. Anybody here ever been to Darby House? It's, anybody remember John Galbraith? Darby Dam Farms in the southwest corner of Franklin County. He had a farm down there and raised horses. And there's a trophy room at Darby House. It's a farm now, but it's really more of a wedding destination for this now. And if you're willing to spend about $25,000, you can have your wedding there. That was not my fee, by the way, for doing the wedding. And I looked it up online. You can have your wedding there if you'd like. There's a trophy room with Kentucky Derby trophies and also World Series trophies, because John Galbraith was also owner of the Pittsburgh Pirates. I think I'll just talk sports now for the rest of this sermon. But it was very important, particularly to the bride, that we have a unity candle as part of the wedding ceremony. Remember what a unity candle is? And I explained to everybody gathered there the meaning of the unity candle. The unity candles are, there's two candles that are already lit on the side, and there's one in the middle that's not lit yet. And I talked about how this candle here, I'm talking to the groom now in front of everybody, this candle here represents you and your family and your friends and everyone gathered here, and also everyone who has come before you. This candle represents every person in your life who is unable to be here today because of the physical separation of death. And a number of things happened at this wedding that I never had happen before. I can tell you those privately, but one of them that happened, I've never had a family do this before. On the bride's side, they had two big pictures of grandparents, one grandparent and another grandparent, pictures sitting in chairs. I've never seen a family do that before. I got there a little early, I walked in, I was the only one in the area where the wedding was going to be. Everybody else was over here getting ready, and I walked in and there they were. We warm ourselves at fires that we didn't build. We drink from wells that we didn't dig. And sometimes we walk paths that we did not create. And I want to read you this, if I can find it. Here it is. You should be very afraid right now. I have many pieces of paper. I have more books. Be very afraid. Sometimes we walk paths that have been put there for us. And then Spanish poet Antonio Machado, who lived in the 19th into the early 20th century, he wrote this. Sometimes it's like this. I don't know. I have a sense that maybe your life has been a little like mine. Sometimes the path is obvious. Can somebody raise their hand and say, every path that you've walked in your life has been obvious and you've had no doubt where to go, right? Can anybody raise their hand? Don't, please. I wouldn't have any way to relate to you. Spanish poet Antonio Machado wrote this: "Traveler, there is no path. The path is made by walking. Traveler, the path is your tracks and nothing more. Traveler, there is no path. The path is made by walking. By walking you make a path, and turning you look back, as a way you will never tread again. Traveler, there is no road, only wakes in the sea. The path sometimes is made by walking." And tomorrow morning, when you have your morning coffee or your morning tea or your morning whatever you have, and you sit at your laptop, and as is your habit, you go, you check the weather, you check the news, you check sports, right? And then you go to AP News. I know that's what you do. You go to AP News. Tomorrow morning, when we do that, we should ask ourselves a question. Who in the news is reflecting the way, the path? No less than God. Who's doing that? I'll finish with this, even though I have many more pieces of paper. Jesus said, "There are many rooms in my house. If it were not so, I would have told you." And some Christians over the centuries have weaponized what was read today when Jesus says, and by the way, he only says it in John. He doesn't say it in Matthew, he doesn't say it in Mark, he doesn't say it in Luke. I'm just saying. He only says it in John. He says, "No one comes to the Father except through me." Some people over the centuries have weaponized that. They shouldn't. Because essentially what Jesus is saying is, do you want to know what the Christian God is like? Then watch me. Listen to me. Watch me. Listen to me. So we go to North Carolina, and where we usually stay is where we stayed last week. We stayed at a Holiday Inn Express. And so it's almost a 9-hour experience. If you go to Google Maps, I told you, you really want to know this. If you go to Google Maps and you drive from my driveway to Brevard, North Carolina, it tells you it'll take you 7 hours and 58 minutes. Almost 8. Let's round it off to 8. So the whole experience, depending on how many times you stop, is about a 9-hour trip. And so we pulled into the porte-cochere and we got out of our cars, and I've noticed over the years, after being in the car for 9 hours, I don't move quite as quickly as I used to when I get out of the car. I'm always hoping that nobody really notices. I noticed. So I hobbled up to the front desk, and I was really amazed because the person working at the front desk had their Bible open and was reading. I wouldn't make this up, right? They were reading this passage. And they looked up at me and they smiled and they said, "Weary traveler, do not despair. In my Father's house there are many rooms." And we hear that today. And I think the living Spirit of Christ would be pleased if we use our imagination and we see this day, this unrepeatable miracle, if we see this day as a room, and it is given to us. And in this room we have everything that we need. We have each other. This day is a room, and we are given, and we are welcome. In God's house there are many rooms, and all are welcome. Christ is the way. Christ is the map. Amen?